Okay, well, hello. Welcome to the second iteration of Ask a Graymuzzle Anything. I am Sylys Sable. Um, in the real world, Mark Merlino. I'm a furry fan, like all of you probably are. But my partner Rodney and I and some friends started hosting parties at science fiction conventions looking for other people who are interested in animal characters. And we found some. And after a few years, we were also involved heavily into anime conventions or anime fandom at the time. They were using science fiction conventions for their screenings. And were asked very nicely if they would maybe start their own conventions. And at that point, Rodney and I thought, gee, maybe we should start a convention for these animal people fans like us. And so in 1989, we ran Conference Zero as like a dry run test for a furry convention. And after that, continued to run conventions together until 1999 under the name of Conference. So that's why I'm up here, is so people can ask questions about the early fandom and how things have changed over the years. If people want more information about this, check out the documentary The Fandom by Ash Coyote and her team. It's free on YouTube. A lot of information about the original Japanese animation fan club, how that morphed into furry fandom, how the convention started out, are all covered in that film, which is probably the first furry documentary that actually covers the history of the community. So I guess I will start taking questions from the room and also from Discord and also from Twitch if that's live. So what do we got? Okay. Do you have something, Flower?
I think I can stand here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I can hear you just fine.
Okay. How do you feel the fandom has evolved since when you first started, and what do you think of the fandom now?
Well, it's really good to see how big it's gotten. In the very beginning, art was kind of everything. The whole convention was based on the art show and the artists in the dealer's room. It wasn't, we weren't into people doing animation yet. We weren't into people doing, uh, uh, collectibles and things like that. It was all about the art. And I see that even though fursuits have become kind of the ambassadors of the fandom, they're the thing that everybody recognizes, and they're also a kind of art. Art is still the biggest thing in the fandom, although a lot of it now is online. The furry art community is probably the largest sort of self-supporting, artists and people buying art group in the world compared to any other art group. And otherwise, the conventions aren't that different. There's some politics that's kind of reared its ugly head. But if you go to the conventions, people are still having a great time. And are not much different, except way more people. Hope that answered the question.
It did. Thank you very much.
So I have a question about the future of the fandom itself, because you've been here almost since the beginning, and you've seen how the fandom has progressed. Where do you think is the next big thing that the fandom will experience? Like right now, we've started to go into virtual reality and even have conventions in virtual reality. What do you think would be the next big thing?
I think that what we're doing now is going to become kind of a norm, and I expect that the technology will improve. I think we'll probably, since everybody is going mobile for everything, there may be in the short time the way to bring VR into a mobile situation, or at least augmented reality into a mobile situation. Otherwise, I don't think the art community is going to change much. I think people will still be wanting personal art, even if it's just downloaded. I can't really predict if there's going to be like people getting body mods, genetic manipulation, becoming actual furries, or if real furries will ever exist. But anytime there is a social change in the way people communicate, the furries jump on it first.
That was what I was referring to, because I know virtuality is by a lot of people are considered a gimmick, but however, well, I mean, this room's absolutely filled, so. But thank you for answering my question.
Yeah, I mean, you got to realize that art is still something you have to pay for if you're not an artist yourself. Fursuits are still something you have to buy or build yourself, and they're not easy to make. In VR, everybody can have a virtual fursuit. You can start out with a free one, and you can get it modified, or you can pay for a custom one. But we're all living now in a continuous furry convention in our virtual fursuits, which are kind of like real fursuits, including the fact that if someone's standing right next to you, you don't know it. Yes, fun time. Yeah, come up a little closer. There we go.
Did you hear what I said? Did you hear what I said already?
No, I didn't. So have to repeat it. Sorry.
Okay, no, you're fine. With the advent of VR and like how it's getting cheaper, it's getting easier to get into with stuff like the Quest 2 and all that. How do you think VR is going to affect the community as a whole? Like, just how do you think it's going to, change things, if at all?
Well, I think one thing I've seen personally in my own household is it's helped people who were involved in the fandom, but not really at a personal level. They were kind of sitting back and watching it happen, interacting a little bit. And now some of these people are actually getting way more active on a personal level, getting friends they can hang out with pretty much anytime they want, even if they're on the other side of the world. The social aspect of furry was something that a lot of people avoided. I mean, there are still people who've never gone to a convention, never gone to a meetup, and they do everything online in text to each other, emails and on Twitter and Telegram and places like that. Now those people who might be a little shy about their own physical look or something have a place to go where they can look like they want to look and meet other people. So I think the social aspect is really going to get a boost because of things like VR chat.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hi, Jazz.
Hi. My question is the following. Since you experienced the fandom for so long, in which which things changed from your perspective, from your personally, when it starts funny animals, and now with how much the art of anthropomorphic animals and the fandom evolved. In which way does that change your viewpoint on the fandom over the time?
Well, in the very beginning, the people creating the art were people who were interested in cartooning as a job, as a profession. And there was no internet, so these people were interested in getting into the comics industry, becoming a creator or on the staff of someone writing a comic strip that was syndicated in newspapers, getting into the animation industry, which was starting to come out of kind of a dark age at the time, where animation was just cranked out of factories and wasn't all that good in the US. And the fans, the people who liked this art. And back then, people who were the artists didn't really see much value in the fans except someone to practice art for. They were much more interested in networking with each other. Early conventions, artists would flock to them not because of the fans, but because they could integrate. They could work with, talk to other artists, trade ideas, things like that. We didn't have like portfolio reviews like comic conventions had, where people could bring their art and show it to publishers. It was kind of an insular thing. When some of the fans decided to become artists themselves, then they realized I could sell my art to other fans. And that furry art economy didn't really get going until after the first 9 or 10 years of the fandom. And it became a point where you had this mutual admiration society between fans and artists, and many fans crossing over and becoming artists. So that was a huge change. And of course, the internet was a huge change, because now, and the pre-internet, when people began to be able to meet each other online, although all they were doing is texting, that's where you got a lot of people developing their own furry personalities, their own avatars, which eventually became called personas. And they could meet other people from anywhere in the world, talk to them, role play with them. So those two things changed the way the fandom dispersed. And then we had finally web sharing sites, web rings, and then social media. And that's why it grew like exponentially. The curve just went up crazily. Although to this day, you're not going to find too many people in the furry fandom that aren't furry, that don't have that interest in animal characters. That is the reason why you'll run into people who are curious and they'll go, I just don't understand why you'd want to be an animal person. They can't, because they're not furry. It sounds silly that the furry fandom is made up of mainly furries, but that's the way it actually is.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Sample.
Hi. I just want to start by saying that this is my first furry convention, and my question has to do with that. So, with the advent of VR-based conventions and meetups and whatnot, do you think that in-person conventions will still be as big, or maybe it'll be bigger, or do you think VR will be the new staple?
Actually, it's hard to say. Right now, there are a lot of people. If you watch the social channels, there are a lot of people going, "Oh, I can't wait to get back to a real convention." Most of those people have been to a live convention before, and they miss it. They miss it terribly. But now that things are starting to open up, and a few conventions have happened, and they were pretty well attended, we'll have to see if we get the large conventions happening, if we get more small conventions starting up. Organizing conventions is not an easy thing. Probably not in VR either, but you don't have to deal with hotels or other venues. You don't have to worry about transportation if you're trying to attend, or if you're a staff member from somewhere else in the world that has to get there somehow. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, I'm guessing that by the time Midwest Fur Fest happens, if they don't put a hard limit on attendance, since that was the largest furry convention that ever has been in 1999. In 2019, sorry. In 2019, it was the largest furry convention ever with like 12,000 people. It'll be interesting to see what happens, not necessarily the first year that they have a live convention, but after things are more under control, what happens the year after that. We'll see if they can get that kind of attendance again. But I don't think VR conventions are going away. And as the platform gets more stable and more tricks are developed to optimize things, we might be able to have even bigger virtual furry conventions than we have now. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it did. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Hi, Flay.
Oh, and I've got a couple questions here from Discord, so I'm going to kind of just work these in from time to time between the audience here.
Great.
I've got one from Halvid. Hey, what's your favorite past con memory?
Recently, that would probably be the 2019 Midwest Fur Fest. I had not been to a Midwest Fur Fest before. That was their 20th anniversary convention, and I decided all of us, my whole family, myself and my 3 partners, would all go to that convention because it was the 20th to see what it was like. And Thursday night, going to the main hotel, which is the Hyatt, it has a large open atrium with multiple floors. And walking into that room the night before programming actually started, except for the few dances they were having, the vision of thousands of furries in one room just hanging out was completely mind-blowing. I'd never seen anything like it. There were as many people in that lobby as you normally get at a convention, just in that one room. So that was brilliant. Otherwise, going back in the past, it's kind of hazy, but I really liked the response that I would get from people at conventions who would come up to me and say, I came into the lobby not expecting anything. I came into the lobby just to see what it was like. And I saw the people there. I saw some people in fursuits. I saw some people on couches drawing. I saw all this. And he goes, and the person went, and I felt that I was finally home. I'd found my family. I'd found my place. So thank you for the question. Got any more from Discord, Flay? Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So Semley asks, what was the public reaction to the early fandom?
The very early fandom, the public wasn't really interested. A few people who unfortunately are members of the fandom did a great deal to create an image that the general public hated furries. They did this for their own reasons. I'm not quite sure what they were, but the general public didn't really care that much about furries or comic fans or science fiction fans or film fans. They were just fans, with the term fan being short for fanatic. There were people who were really, really into something that they weren't into. A good example is our hotel history for our convention conference. Every single hotel that we had our convention in was dying to have us come back. They wanted us back. The hotel staffs had so much fun. The hotels, we would pick times of the year when there was a lot of business at the hotel, so they got a lot of business because of our convention. So business-wise, it was cool for them. But the only reason we changed hotels at the beginning is we kept outgrowing them. And every time we went to another hotel, they would get glowing reports from our previous hotel. So it was really easy to find a venue back then when we were small enough that we could actually do that, go from small hotel to a slightly larger hotel. And the people who came into the hotel while we were there, for the most part, were enjoying it. And I love the fact that at one point with an early convention, somebody who I think was maybe with an airline or something, because the hotels always put up airline pilots and and stewardesses between flights, came up with kind of a bad attitude about, who are all these weirdos in the lobby? And the person at the desk said, "What do you mean weirdos? These are our people. We host this convention every year." So actually, the general public in the early fandom either didn't know about us or thought we were interesting.
Cool. Thank you for answering. Does anybody else here want to
You're
take
welcome.
a question?
Hey, Jazz.
So now that we have virtual Furcons, how's your personal experience with them? Like, we're now with people that just internationally can come by with such a low ceiling of entrance. How do you feel about that? Like, do you like to go on Furcons like this also on your free time?
Oh, I love it. It's just wonderful. I actually got a friend of mine invited me into VR chat in 2018, and I got a dragon avatar, and I was walking around, and everybody I met was slinging insults at me and him, and it was not very pleasant at all. So I just kind of went, this isn't for me. 2020, in April, I got a loan from my mate Changa back there, he's Changa Husky, of his Rift S headset. And I went back into VR chat to see what it was like. And this time, I ended up hanging out with furries. And the experience was completely different. I felt welcome. I felt instantly at home, like I was at a convention that just never stopped. And I made friends very quickly. I am not much for self-promotion, so nobody knew who I was except I was this other guy. And, occasionally things would come out. People would go, wait a minute. Your voice sounds familiar. Were you in that furry documentary? It's like, so yeah, I was. But I love it, and I'm glad it happened. And I've met so many people from around the world, places I would never think. I have a person I met who's from Saudi Arabia, and he told me about what it's like to be a furry in Saudi Arabia, and it's amazing just how different the cultures are around the world. And it's become, back in the day on Mux, you didn't know where somebody was from. And it was amazing that there were people from Germany and people from Russia and places like that as characters there. But it's great. I love the diversity. And the furries make VR chat work much better than the original communities that were here in the beginning.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Everyone's shuffling around. Hi, B.
Hi. If you could go back in time to when you were first starting conference, what would you say to your younger self?
Probably I would point out to me why there were people trying to damage the convention or the fandom. Because when that started happening, myself and the people I worked with at the convention really didn't understand what was going on. We knew we were dealing with a very small amount of people who were set on stopping the fandom from happening or changing it in some way, preventing us from putting on conventions. And I didn't understand what that was all about until 20 years later, because I couldn't believe that people could be that petty and close-minded. So I would have been more comfortable, even though I would have had to still deal with the same problems, if I'd known what the source of it actually was. Otherwise, I think I would point out to me this thing that you and your friends are doing is going to cost you a lot of money. Just as a warning, because it kind of caught up with us. It's like, how do you make a small fortune in furry fandom? You start with a large fortune and run a convention. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, well, thank you again.
You're welcome.
Hello, I returned.
Some
I
more
got another
Discord
one here
things.
from Discord. Yeah, there's a lot of them. So I think this is Tango Delta asks, how does it feel to be as your Sona in VR?
Oh, I like it. I started playing my Sona kind of when this character, Sylys Sable, was created. Before this, the very first Skilter I made up was a Skilter named Theta, who wasn't me. She was a character in a story I was developing. And I invented the species because I liked the idea of there being an intelligent alien species that wasn't a human, or wasn't a human with something stuck to their head or something like that. And I liked weasels, so I made a pine marten, intelligent pine marten with antennas that are part of their sensory system that were empathic. And that was back in high school. So when my friends and I started the animation club called the Cartoon Fantasy Organization, I had been using Theta on my posters and hand out schedules for video rooms at conventions. And they said, "We love Theta. Make up a skill tear to be our club mascot." So I created a aquatic skill tear with a magenta stripe called Fanta, because it was the Cartoon Fantasy Organization. And about a year later, I made a partner for her named Sai. So the two of them were the co-mascots. And for some reason, people started calling me Sai. My partners, the people who live with me, people in the club, and I liked it. So I just started responding to Sai. That was my fan name after that. And when I got on Furry Muck, by that time I had Sylys Sable. Sylys Sable is not a skill tear. Sylys Sable is a humanoid pine marten, which back in the day we called recoms. They were essentially genetically manipulated combinations of human and animal that were made for, by science for some reason. And a lot of people were making up characters for themselves, including our friend Ken Sample, he used to draw caricatures of himself responding to really sexy female furries. A lot of furry art in the beginning was really sexy female furries affecting, human characters, which were generally the artist or the artist's friends or something. It was very much a pin-up sort of art. And then suddenly, for some reason, the character reacting to his females wasn't a caricature of himself, but it was a little cougar guy that looked just like him, had the same hairstyle, the same build, wore the same clothing, had the same glasses, but he was a cougar. And all of us said, "Oh my goodness, it's Ken Cougar." And he goes, "No, that's not me." It's like, what do you mean it's not you? It looks just like you. So all of us wanted to jump on the bandwagon and make up humanoid furry characters to be us. Sylys Sable for me, Vince and Mink for Rodney, Andre Tiger for my partner Andre. And that became pretty common back then. And when I got on Furry Muck, I got on as Sylys Sable. And it was cool to be me, but different. People would respond to me as my character. And I developed this interesting habit of, once I found out what someone's persona was, even though it wasn't called personas back then, I could, in my mind, see them as their persona in real life, which I can still do to this day. And I like that a lot. I really enjoy being my characters. So even for a while, my girlfriend and I were Fanta and Sai. She was Fanta and I was Sai when we were hosting the CFO meetings at her house. So hope that answers that question.
I think so, yeah. I'll ask one more, and then I'll turn it back to the audience here. I've got one from Riley here. You kind of touched on it a little bit, how you got friends all over the place. Do you expect to see the fandom expand to different places across the world? where things are pretty different. You know, for example, India, do you expect to see the fandom have an influence over there?
I think that's going to happen because the idea that people are born furry and they have this interest, I don't think that's affected by where they come from, their economic situation, their education. It's just kind of hard coded into the brain for some reason, you know. And even though people say, well, we've got globalization now, everybody's got cell phones and their countries are getting electricity and clean water, and it's going to take a while before you'll see organized furry groups in countries where that sort of thing just doesn't fit into the culture. I mean, we've had a little bit of culture shock even in this country. I had a friend from Japan because in Japan, it turned out that animated shows which had animal characters were considered children's shows. Not all anime was, just the ones with animal characters were considered children's shows. But there were furries in Japan that loved those shows. But he told me if you live in Japan at that time, you don't advertise that you like those shows. It's something that you keep to yourself or your other friends, because people will look at you and say, oh, that's childish, grow up. So I think we have that to get over in a lot of countries. And of course, the social aspects of the fandom, the mutual affection, that, and the fact that a lot of it is LGBT related. Countries that have problems with that, the furry fandom's going to have problems organizing and growing in. But I think it's going to happen.
Cool, thank you for that. With that, I'll just turn it over in case someone here has a question.
You're
If
welcome.
not, I'll keep going with Discord.
Anybody in here? You're a good group. Hi, Wizzo. Oh, hi, Wolf.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So this one's kind of more directed towards you. Where do you think you would have seen yourself if you never found the furry fandom? Like, what would you be doing now?
Well, I was super involved with the CFO anime group as the librarian. I was the person that had all the tapes and brought all the tapes and showed all the tapes and copied all the tapes. Wasn't much into the politics. Yeah, there was even politics in that group. But by the time that VCRs became something that everybody had, and animation started being available, Japanese animation started being available to buy at first bookstores and then video stores or rent, there wasn't much of a need for what I was doing anymore. I had my business, which at the time was I'm a audiophile and I design hi-fi speaker systems. I have a couple of patents on them, and I started 2 companies to manufacture them, running into the problem where once you get to a certain size, you need a huge influx of capital, which I never got. So there aren't a lot of my speakers out there, although the people have them, love them. And I graduated from the university with my electronics degree. I went into the speakers instead of going into aerospace like everybody else did. I was an engineer for Subaru for a while, Subaru Tech Center. And then I sort of got into the communications industry. I would have pursued that. Probably I would have gotten more active again in science fiction and fantasy fandom. If the furry thing hadn't taken off. But, according to my parents, I was always furry from being a toddler. And it's something that needed to happen. But generally, I won't take on a project unless I have a partner. I'll have somebody by my side to help out. And that's where Rodney came in. Rodney, at a convention where I was running video room, Rodney came up to me and asked me the question that started it all: why do your pine martens and otters have antennas? And probably if he hadn't asked me that question, none of this would exist, or somebody else would have done it.
I see. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good question. Wizzo.
Oh, how are you?
I'm good.
Good, you can hear me. So my question is kind of a double-sided one. How has the pandemic and all the social isolation that's happened with it, how has that affected you personally, and what do you think of the community response to it this past year?
Well, for me, we kind of lucked out in our house because I have my 3 partners here and 2 other roommates. 2 of my partners pretty much work from home all the time before the pandemic. So for them, nothing really changed. My business was like 50% doing remote assistance to projects in the field and 50% going into the field in areas where there weren't large groups of people and wasn't indoors. Working on projects, putting in public safety antenna systems for large apartment buildings, doing network wiring in new construction or renovated areas where I was like the only person in the building, maybe a helper. It was easy to avoid people. And, my partners said, as far as other reasons to go outside, my partner says, you aren't going anywhere. So they quarantined me like in March, before the United States was catching up. One of my other roommates who worked for Disney, he unfortunately was, what do you call it? He wasn't laid off. He was furloughed. He was furloughed for a couple of months, and it was a strain for him. But it turned out that the department he works in does prep for other stores and such, and he could work behind the scenes pretty much by himself without any contact when Disney started getting their properties opened up again. So his furlough didn't last too long. Last roommate works for the railroad. He's an engineer, as in a train driver. And he already would be out of the house for months at a time, running trains back and forth across the Rockies, staying in motels or staying in his friend's place way out in the high desert. So we were good. Our family situation was good. I missed a lot of going out, and we really missed our parties. Because we had monthly room parties.
I was going to mention that. That's the one thing that really wrecked. Well, it was the biggest shift is we have monthly parties at our house. I'm one of his partners. And
this is Changa.
Woo! Yeah, and stopping those was a radical shift. They were every month, the second Saturday of every month, and having 50 people or so, 50 or 60 upwards, sometimes like 100, is really a bad idea during a pandemic. And we were a little... Yeah, that... I mean, we were a little bit more nervous about everything, me and Sari, but even if you weren't nervous, that many people in our house was probably not a good idea for them or us.
Or public image.
That really cramped our style, having to stop the parties. And hopefully we'll get them going again. We're going to have an outside picnic the end of June to sort of welcome people back, a small amount of people back. and kind of get it going again. But it's been far worse for a lot of people around the world. A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people had problems paying their rent. And in certain countries, it's not over. There's just so many people so sick and dying. And the politicians haven't really helped.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Ah. Okay, Furry?
Okay, so over like the past year when the pandemic started, suddenly I'm starting to see like there seems to be like some fursuit makers are like now like experimenting with these new techniques to probably like to create like their own like molds to like, and with the use of three-dimensional sculpting and with 3D printing that I've been seeing yet to myself what Mixed Candy is doing. So with new techniques like that, which I'm thinking that it could spawn like possibility of like what we could see in the next generation of fursuit making of techniques and other ways to cut down the usage of materials and also for a possibility of production time and whatnot. What would you see in the next few years of these like kind of like new techniques that could improve on the way how they perform and the way how they look as from today till later on in the next few years? How would you see that?
I think that, of course, I don't have a fursuit. I'm thinking about getting one, but I don't have one yet. And,
me neither.
My mate Sari is the first person in the house with a fursuit. He has a partial.
Oh, nice.
But I knew a lot of people who were the first fursuiters, and when Robert Hill created his Bambioid Hilda, which was kind of a doe sort of who wore leather.
Interesting.
He actually sculpted the head in clay and then made a mold from it and then cast it in fiberglass, the same way that they made the Disneyland walk-around costumes, which he had actually played those costumes in Disneyland. He used the same techniques, which would never have flown as far as mass production. Nobody would have done it that way but him. And I was there when people started doing the carved foam heads, which literally were carved out of a solid block of foam, and then you cut a hole in the middle to stick your head in. Those had the problem of they would deteriorate quickly. The foam would deteriorate, the fur would come off, the glue would let go of the fur. But those were the first fursuits that could be made to look like known characters in comics and animation, and they were really popular for a short time. I don't know if the modern techniques of making bases, one thing I'd like to see happen without it hurting the artist is I'd like to see the cost come down. I'd like to see people being able to buy fursuits without spending $5,000. And I think I've seen a couple of companies doing that. There's a company that has a booth at a lot of furry conventions that makes what they call spec fursuits. They make fursuits that are just designed by a team, not to anyone's particular design parameters. So they're not someone's persona. And they're beautifully made. They're all partials. They're beautifully made, and they're only in the $1,200, $1,400 range, which is great because I think anybody that wants a fursuit should be able to get one. But one thing I think is really cool is you've got different parts of the world doing different style fursuits you never saw before, like the kimono fursuits that come out of Japan and the Middle East.
Correct.
With larger eyes and whole different facial structures and a lot of tricks they do on the body to make the character look smaller, even though it's not really smaller. I think that's really great. I don't think the fursuit business is going to change much. People will still be making them a traditional way for a long time. But maybe we'll start getting some new iterations like animated eyes, animated ears, mouths, maybe twitching noses, animated tails. Some people have already done that. And also there's people who do embedded LEDs in the fur that you put on, you basically, your fursuit becomes a walking light show. Or people that put sound systems in their fursuits and they, become a DJ on a stage as they walk around and play music.
Like a sound amplifier.
Just about
amplifier.
Anything that you can do with a fursuit, though, has been done before. It's just that it's going to become more common now, I think.
Yeah. Like trial and error, seeing what needs to be done or what could be possible, because, it represents various special and complex challenges in order to adapt it from two-dimensional drawn concept art into an art form in reality, depending on the amount of materials and which types you should go for and to avoid. Yeah.
One thing that I think it's not fursuit related, but one thing that I wish I saw more of was 3D 3D art, as in sculpture. I've always wanted to have sculptures of my persona, and because I knew a guy, Ruben Avila, who was an incredible sculptor, I was able to get these made for me, and they're beautiful. But you don't have a lot of people. You look on the furry art site. You don't have a lot of people who are doing sculpture. More people are actually doing plushes than actual sculpture. And I think it's interesting that there was one person who would come to furry conventions and he had like a full body scanning rig, and you could stand there in your fursuit and he would scan it, and then he would make a 3D printed model for you.
Right,
Very expensive. And it didn't happen. I mean, he had to wait for him to send it to you. But recently, the company called Hero Forge, which basically makes custom miniatures for gaming, has expanded their menus, and people are now starting to make their personas or the furries they play in games as miniatures. So there's definitely a market for that. And, some furries who jump on that market are going to be, making the bucks for a while until it becomes like a common thing.
Right, yeah.
But thank you for your question. I mean, you should try to find someone who's a fursuit maker to ask that too.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Sylys. Thank you very much.
Oh,
okay, Flay.
I'm back,
That's
and
some more stuff.
Yes. Well, this one is just an update here from Furality. I just wanted to let everyone know that the next event will begin at 7 o'clock. So that's going to be cutting off very shortly here. However, this panel will still go on for another hour. For those who are still interested in following along with the Q&A, if you're in the main event world, this will still continue on for you as if nothing changed. If you're still interested in watching from Twitch on Furality.org, there will be a link to the stream there. That's all. I just wanted to give that update, and I also have another question.
Okay.
So unless someone else has one. But yeah, so here is the next question here from Geronimo on Discord. What is your biggest wish for the future of the fandom?
Well, one of them is kind of a difficult one, but I'd love it if the few people who are still trying to hurt the fandom, split it up, cancel cons, I wish they would just stop. Either, recognize that their obsession is destructive, or give up, or just go away. If that one thing happens, it'll make the whole community a lot more comfortable. Otherwise, I think the furries know what they're doing. I think we're going to end up with, bigger conventions, more VR stuff, and opening up more of the world to the community.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll turn this back over to someone else. If someone else has a question.
Hi, Fun Time.
Hi again. With going kind of off the question I asked before, with how VR is becoming much more easier, do you think that VR cons like this one are going to become more popular than in-person ones? Or do you think the fact that in-person ones are, in person, you can directly interact with people, do you think that one's going to let the in-person cons have the upper hand over VR?
I think you could draw one of them Venn diagrams, with the circles. There are people, circles. There are people who don't like going to cons in person, and more of them are going to go to VR cons. And there are people who like going to cons in person, but they don't like the fact that they're like a stretched weekend, and then they have to wait for the next con. They can jump on VR and have con after con after con, or the continuous after con party that VR chat already is. There's going to be a lot of activity happening on both sides once we get the pandemic shoved down again. Whether or not the live cons will get bigger or be as big, we won't know for a while yet. We don't know what kind of rules the conventions will come up with for number of attendees, safe spacing, because we can't there is no going back to normal. It's not going to happen. We have to be careful. This won't be the first potential pandemic. This is going to keep happening. So we have to learn how to live differently and safer. People are going to have to stop going to conventions sick. There's a thing that everybody's heard of before called con crud. I went to the convention and I got so sick. That happened because somebody had to go to that convention, and even though they were sick, they went. And became a spreader. People are going to have to just go, when I'm sick, I'm going to stay home. Just like I was supposed to do during the pandemic, I'm going to continue to follow that advice, and I'm not going to go out where I can spread whatever it is I've got, even if it's just a cold or the flu. And hey, the flu kills a lot of people every year. So yeah, I think, and of course, as far as VR chat's concerned, or things like VR chat, we're going to need a lot more computing power so that these conventions can be bigger. And more people can be in one instance and things like that. Because it's in its infancy now.
With just one can also argue that VR chat isn't the best just because it's on Unity. Unity is a very powerful engine, but there are, if there was one specifically, like an engine specifically made for this, it could do that without having to require everyone to have 3080 Ti's to render everyone.
Right.
I just wish someone would do that already.
That'll probably happen too. People who build worlds, I mean, the first thing to do is they build worlds. They slap them together, they throw them up, and you go into the world and it's like, oh my God, this thing is huge. Look at how many megabytes this thing is. It's like, but if they're really into it, they learn from other people. They go online and they go, I can optimize this. I can make this smaller. I can let more people into my world by making my world more efficient. So that's going to keep happening. So, yeah. There are other options. I mean, when Further Confusion ran their convention, they cut a deal with Zoom to allow 150-person instances in Zoom. So they did almost all of their panels in Zoom. And it worked. I mean, I don't think you can have 150 people in one instance in VR chat or any other game like it.
Not without VR chat directly helping.
Yeah.
And even then, it's going to still probably be a train wreck just because, like, 10 FPS.
We have to be very grateful that VR chat is free.
Yeah, and they actually did publicize this event as well, on their Twitter at least.
Because Second Life, which was another very popular place where furries kind of took over, isn't free for builders. And it's very expensive for builders, which is one of the reasons that the furries kind of left it, because the builders said, I can't afford this.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hi, Malvagio.
Hey. Oh, you pronounced it right. Thank you. What would be one of your favorite pieces of fairly popular art that you consider pro-furry or at least furry progressive?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I look at a lot of art. I like, even though it's not anthro, I like a lot of the really detailed work that's showing up in comics that are like animal adventures. I mean, the first artist that got really good at doing super hyper detail was an artist named Dark Natasha. Where it's like you look at her paintings, it's like she painted every hair by hand. And that was such a departure from the cel-shaded look, which of course is based on animation. But the people who will actually do a comic with an art style that is hyper realistic, or they'll develop a style that is simple but beautiful. I mean, it's not actually furry, but there's an artist, writer named Kay O'Neill who created a series called the Tea Dragon Society. It was originally a webcomic which got published, and then 2 other books in the same series. And the stories are very well written, the characters are amazing, but the art is very simple. It's almost like block print art. Lots of shapes and color that convey the feelings that go with the characters. Not a lot of dialogue. A lot of dialogue isn't necessary. And I look at that and I go, this is very, very different than a lot of comic art that's out there. But it's beautiful in its own way, and it actually helps tell the story. I'm very much into art that tells a story, even if it's just one scene, just one panel. And I had a lot of early frustration going up to artists, seeing a beautiful piece of art and saying, oh, I want to know about that character. Tell me about that character. And they'd go, it's just a character I thought up. Like, there's no background? You don't have any background for this character? And they go, no, it's just a character I thought up. So, yeah, any picture that tells a story, I'm going to be, to me anyway, I'm going to be interested in, and I'm going to think is worthy of my attention.
Thank you very much.
I think that's one of the reasons. I think that's one of the reasons that personas are so cool. Is either people draw their personas themselves and they put personality in them, or they commission people who do a tremendously good job of putting personality in the drawing. And once again, it's a drawing that tells a story.
Thanks again.
Hi, Sample.
This is my last question before I have to go. But I wanted to ask something that personally interests me, and that is like the art and business side. And as someone who likes working with physical material like wood and metal, I was just wanted to know your opinion on not traditional art expression, like whether it be through wood carving or anything that's not specifically drawn.
I think it's great that if you look widely in the art in the furry community at art, see a lot of digital art, a lot of paintings, but you also see people doing, glass etching, sculpture, people doing like little mechanical, music boxes, super complex, with an animated character on them. Metalwork, maybe a weapon from a game or something like that. You see a lot of people doing model work, and I think that's great. I love that stuff. So yeah, I mean, if you like furry art, look a little further, and you might find some interesting stuff that isn't traditional graphics.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello. I come back.
Hi. Okay.
More questions from Discord here. Let's see, which one? Okay, so we got Starmites. What was it like when the media started reporting on the furry fandom as a whole?
Okay, some of the stuff that like Hollywood glommed onto about the fandom goes back to the 80s. And it didn't take more than, say, one piece that got it so wrong to get the interest up in furry as essentially a sensationalistic background or something to sell your magazines or get eyes on your news show or something. Basically, we had a person who was a filmmaker who was into kink, who went to a furry convention and thought that because there were people dressed up, that it was a kink. He made his own documentary. He got people from the fandom involved in it. And at least one person pretty much took advantage of him. He pretty much completely made up the idea that furry fandom was a kink and expressed it to this guy, who, of course, was very happy because, oh, man, I'm right. It is a kinky thing. And he put his film out, and very few people saw it. But people in Hollywood saw it and said, we've never heard of this furry fandom thing. This is really weird and strange. after that, they started doing things like the MTV piece, the CSI piece, things like that, because that was the perception that Hollywood had of the furry fandom. We invited the press to our conventions. We kept them under pretty much strict control. We watched everything they did, but the final piece was pretty much up to them. So if you look at the piece that Sci-Fi Buzz did on Conference 4, it covers the fandom pretty much completely, all the different aspects, including the risque side, because we're a fandom of adults here. And it's not even a hit piece. It's basically, this is what happens at a furry convention. Isn't it unusual? Look at all this art. Look at these costumes. Look at this strange talent show thing they have. And it was completely okay. I think part of the problem is the reaction that people in the fandom had to these things was way over the top. And it was like, look, this is what people think of the fandom. No, it's not. It's what filmmakers thought of it. And they said, oh, we can mine this. We can mine this weirdness. You'll see the same thing if you look deep enough. Science fiction conventions, comic conventions, they got the same lousy coverage or twisted coverage that we did. It's not much different. And the same people, the same very small group of people that wants to hurt the fandom or reshape it in their weird image, make sure they completely reintroduce young people to all of these horrible things the media said about furries. Look, you see, this is what other people think you're like. You don't want to be like that, do you? You've got to rise up and do something about this. And they recruit people, and they become troublemakers. They're not new. They've always been in the fandom. So, yeah, I'm sorry. If you're different, there are going to be people, if they even notice you at all, are going to look at you and go, you're weird. So, is that really a problem? It's like, hopefully, all of that will eventually die down. I mean, I think it's wonderful that the animators doing the very, very silly YouTube videos, Furry Force, got an Annie Award. They won it, they got a Ursa Major Award for their film. And some furries look at it and go, oh my God, it's terrible, it's cringe. But they actually dug in. They did research. They dug in and they got the weirdest stuff that goes on in furry fandom, and they put it on the screen as a 1980s animated show. And it's hilarious. Most furries look at it and go, oh, that's great. That is just so crazy. Which is why they won the Ursa Major Award. And not only did they show up to receive the award in person, they promoted the award, and that year there were more people voting for the Ursa Majors than ever had been before. So I guess it's kind of the way you look at it, whether it's bad for the fandom or not.
Gotcha. Thank you. I'll ask one
You're
more,
welcome.
then once again I'll turn it back over to the people on in the world here. So let's see. Will asks, what would you say is your proudest moment or moments about the furry fandom?
Well, back in the beginning, it was the people who would come up to me and confess that I had, the convention, the fandom, had done something great for them, had saved them had helped them find themselves. I always loved that. I always loved the fact that when the conventions were going, after we figured things out, I liked being treated by the hotel staff like I was important, like I was just as important as the people who were there putting on corporate seminars or tour groups. I was their customer, and I was a valued customer, even though what I was bringing to their facility was really different. Later on, I feel this sense of pride when I'm at a convention and I'm just walking around and people will pass me and they'll nod or they'll smile or they'll give me a thumbs up or something like that. It's like all the payback I need is the fact that people recognize what Rodney and me and our friends were trying to do and how it actually worked. And actually seeing the fandom when it was finished, seeing the finished copy of it we got before it was up on YouTube, I felt really proud. I think I even mentioned it in the interview somewhere that it was it's the thing. I'm still an audiophile. I'm very proud of my speakers. I like my job. I like the work I do, but the furry fandom is the thing I'm the most proud of existing and how well it's worked out.
Cool. Thank you again. And then again, I'll turn it back if
You're
anybody
welcome.
here wants any.
Hello.
Hello. I'll keep this one simple this time. What is your favorite genre of music?
Oh, that's going to be hard. Probably right now, certain types of EDM. I really like trance. I really like house music. What? I said house. Rodney, my partner, is saying things in the background. I mean, there's so many genres of EDM that it's hard. It's like every song is its own genre, so it's really hard to remember all of them. I'm not a big fan of hardstyle because it's too simple. But I love classical music. Have since I saw Fantasia when I was a child. I love a lot of what people would call soft rock or folk rock. I even like some metal. There's a lot of metal DJs on Second Life, and I love their sets. I even like some of the more comical or better produced country and western music. So yeah, but right now, yeah, I love EDM and jazz. Some of the really rough fusion stuff, but a lot of the more approachable, smooth jazz stuff.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Hey, Zeno. Hi,
Hello.
Enris.
So, in your opinion, what do you think the most positive and negative things the fandom has impacted on the public?
Well, I think the most positive is it gives creative people a place to go, and it gives a lot of people a source of community and a way to make friends. The negative side is that sometimes people are a little too trusting. You meet someone who's a furry, and it's like, oh, they're a furry. They're like me. I can relate to them. But you still have to be careful. You still have to be careful. You don't really know if a person is going to be abusive, if they're going to be a problem to you. Relationships are tricky. They always will be. So it's kind of like it's a good side. Humans work together well when they can get together, and the bad side, humans can be fearful, mistrusting. They can be damaging. They can be users. So, that's the one thing we have to admit, unfortunately, is we're all furries, but unfortunately, we're still humans. So that's always going to be, a source of good and bad stuff.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Hello
again. Since you do bring it up from time to time, you borrow time to time. If you ever had the chance to, would you build your speakers again, and how much would you sell them for? Like if you were doing like commissions for them, so to say.
Actually, I kind of work on them as commissions now. Right before, right after I kind of shut down the second company that made them. I was able to get in contact with the people that made my cabinets because I am not really a good woodworker. And I had someone else make the cabinets for me. And I was able to order some cabinets from them. And I also had some left over from the wood shop before the guy sold it to the new people that owned it. And I was able to dig through my warehouse and source all the rest of the parts except the few I could get online. And I have made my speakers for a few people. I sell the main speaker, which is a small monitor speaker. It does most of the work. I sell those for $250 a pair. I sell the bass unit, either a mono version for $300, and I sell the stereo versions for $250 each. So those are still available in very, very super limited quantities because when those cabinets are gone, that's it, because my cabinet maker is now gone. They sold the company to people that make kitchen cabinets, and they no longer want to deal with speaker cabinets. And all the other cabinet making has moved overseas to China, and I have no access to that. So that's kind of the end.
All right, so what's your PayPal so I can send you the money now? Don't. If you actually tell me, you will get the $250.
Yeah, you haven't even heard them yet.
Hey.
Yeah.
You're a salesman at this point. Yeah. That's my question. Yeah.
Thank you. That's silly. Never thought I'd be asked that. Hi, Slinky. Hey, Flay.
Yeah, that was actually pretty funny. Let's see. Okay. What do we got? What do you think about how the fandom has become a safe haven for members of the LGBT community?
I think it's great.
And sorry, I was gonna just a little bit more. And do you think it also correlates to the way the found family aspect of the community? That's it. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's great, but it's interesting. Interestingly enough, Rodney and I, who are bisexual, didn't realize what was happening. We didn't realize we were creating a kind of a safe space for LGBT. I mean, we were both involved in science fiction fandom, and there was a lot of openness and a lot of open-mindedness And there were LGBT people in that fandom that we ran into. Not as many in comic fandom, but definitely in science fiction fandom and fantasy fandom. So since our convention was kind of a subset of science fiction conventions, and a lot of science fiction fans showed up at our first conventions, we didn't notice the fact until about Conference 3, when we promoted the convention on Furry Muck, which I don't know if people know what that is. It was a furry role-playing environment that was all text-based, that was run out of a server at a college campus that you could dial into if you had an account. You could dial into it and you could type at other furries. And that was an offshoot from a BBS I had in my house for a while, where we let people make up personas on their account so they could go to a storyboard and play furries without people knowing who they were on their regular account. So we promoted the convention on Furry Muck, and suddenly we had 100 more people show up at the convention who some may have been artists, but for the most part, they were just furry fans who thought, this would be great. I can get to go to this place and I can meet the people that I've made up virtual relationships with in person. And that's when we started seeing a lot of LGBT people show up and hang out. And that's about the time that all the trouble started, with a few people that wanted to destroy it all. Strangely enough, Rodney and I did not recognize that was the reason until literally people had to tell us years later that, well, you know where all that hate was coming from, was the fact that that furry had become an LGBT paradise. And right about the time this was happening at our first conventions was the AIDS crisis, which made it worse. I think it's wonderful. When I see, First Science do it, 70% of the furry fandom is LGBT. It's like, wow, that's cool. I kind of lucked out. When I was growing up, I didn't get involved intimately with people when I was young. I didn't do any of that stuff. I was too much of a nerd. I was too busy with my own pursuits to get any relationships going. When I finally did get relationships going, I had no trouble with my family because I was an adult and it was like, you do what you want. So I know that is not the case for a lot of people. And, I really feel for them. I have dealt with friends of mine who've gone through hell because of their choices. And, I can't personally say I felt that because it just didn't happen to me.
Gotcha. Thank you for answering. I'll do another
You're
one
welcome.
here. This one is from, I believe this is Furia. I'm sorry if I've mangled that. I think that's close enough. They're asking, how does someone play as their sona? Like, how do you role play, or how do you become your sona, essentially?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I did a little, didn't do much role play as Psy the Skill Tear, except I would do cartoons. I do a little bit of art in that I'm not very good at it, but I would do cartoons and greeting cards and posters for CFO where I would draw little comic events with myself and Fanta, who was my girlfriend at the time. I eventually did a little bit of art with my partners, personas, and myself. as far as the role play, that really didn't happen until our BBS, where we had the storyboard and we were playing our characters. And that gave me a chance to flesh out, what's different about Sylys Sable or the other characters, because I had OCs. I didn't have just Sylys Sable. I had OCs I played. And I played some of them a bit too well because I had friends, very good friends, who mistook my OCs for real people. And I didn't realize that I had managed to separate a personality out of myself to play that character and then stay in character. So we're talking all text-based stuff at the time. Maybe some phone conversations where I would slip into my persona. But that was pretty much it back then. You might role play your persona privately with a lover, a partner, or whatever. One very funny story that I like to tell. I had some great friends who were in the CFO. They were in the anime club, and they were creating another library like mine. So I didn't have to provide all the tapes. They were collecting tapes. They had people in Japan they're trading with. They were wonderful people. They moved to Florida, and when Epcot opened, they invited me to come out there, and they gave me a tour of Walt Disney World and Epcot, which was one of the highlights of my life. It was just wonderful. But they knew pretty much about me and about my partner. When I came back with Rodney to visit, we were driving out to Walt Disney World from their place and talking about role-playing. And the two of them were cat people. They loved cats, they had cats, and they themselves were very feline presenting, both of them. Whether they admit it or not. But we're sitting there talking, and the guy is kind of teasing us about playing our characters, playing our made-up characters. And I said, well, come on, admit it. A lot of the enjoyment you get from sex with your partner is fantasy. You do fantasies. You imagine, that you're something else or someone else. Because the sex itself is kind of a mechanical thing. You want to spice it up. The most erotic organ in the human body is the brain. Not anything down here. So I'm explaining this to him, and I'm going, I can't believe, I cannot believe that you two don't play feline. At least sometime when you're intimate. And Kurt goes, oh, no, we don't do that. That'd be silly. And his wife looked at him and said, Bo! So, basically, got the point across. There are people role-playing, and maybe role-playing as furries, but don't know they're furries.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for that. I'll turn it back to the audience if they have any questions.
Hey, Raleigh.
Hey. I had a question about what tips do you have for someone who's going to their very first convention, especially if it's like a really large one, like something like Midwest Fur Fest or Anthrocon?
Well, the first thing is, do you think you'll know anybody there?
Yes, personally. I would be going with 2 people that I know.
That's the best way to go to any fan convention, is go with people you know, or arrange to meet people that you know. when you get there. It's hard to do something like that on your own. Otherwise, if you've never been to one before, there's a lot of stuff to do. Try a little of it all. Don't just get stuck sitting, in the lobby forum area the whole convention. Go around, see stuff. If your friends don't go with you, strike out on a loan. Make a meeting time to come back. Make sure they got your cell phone number. Go to the dealer's room. Go to the artist's alley, where you actually get probably a little more chance to directly interface with the artists. Talk to them. It's a little more intimate than going up to a big fancy booth. If there's a marketplace, which is kind of halfway between a dealer's den and an artist's alley, go there. See as much as you can. On a big convention, that's a lot. Check out the panels. The panels' subjects go all over the place. And if you show up for one and there's not a lot of people there, stick to it, because it might be interesting anyway. You might get actually a little more interface with the person putting the panel on. Go to the dances, even if you don't dance. Enjoy the music. Watch the fursuiters cavort on the dance floor. It's fun. If there's going to be a fursuit parade, stake out a good place, with or without your camera or your phone, and watch the parade of all the different fursuits come by. There's just so much to do. If the hotel, if the convention center has food available, snacks, or if they actually put out a meal. A lot of the bigger conventions, they'll put out a meal. Unless you're going off property with friends to enjoy a meal, you might miss too much. If you can, eat at the convention. If the best you can do is hit the hospitality suite, they always have munchies in there. So, it's like you're at the con. In general, most conventions have enough going on that you don't even have to go outside of the convention to have fun. When we went to MFF, since none of us are winterized at all for cold weather or snow, and we had no idea what the weather's going to be like in Chicagoland at the time, we got a hotel that was on the Skyway walkway that goes to the convention center, and we treated it like we were going to a furry convention in a space station. Outside was hard vacuum, and we were not going to leave the convention. As it turned out, it didn't snow. It wasn't that cold. So a couple of times we'd walk out of the lobby into the drive-up area where all the fursuiters were cooling off, and talk to them. It's like a refrigerated fursuit lounge to go outside where it was 30 degrees. But just enjoy the whole convention. If you have to go to a convention on your own, try to fill your days with stuff to do. Don't sit still and kind of watch the world go by. It can be very depressing. There's stuff there for everybody. And who knows, maybe some of the things you might peek into, you didn't realize you liked until you saw it.
Okay. For someone who is going for the first time and has a fursuit, would you recommend that they go the first day without the fursuit just to get a gauge of everything?
That's smart, because all fursuits, at least all the ones I know, have limited sight and sometimes limited locomotion because of the shape of the feet, or the extra padding on your legs or something. Get the lay of the land, and if you can, find a friend who will go with you, just to keep an eye on things. Some conventions are totally set up for fursuits. BLFC, for example, that's a convention you can go to with a fursuit solo and not worry because the whole convention is looking out for you. Because that's just the way they program it. That's the way it's set up. There are fursuit lounges everywhere. There are helpers in the lounges. There are fursuit play areas where you can just have a ball and have people watch you and take pictures of you. Not all conventions are like that. Sometimes, if you're going to put your fursuit on and walk from your hotel through that skyway at further confusion, you might end up with heat stroke. So
yeah,
be
I've heard
careful.
stories.
Fursuits are really hot inside. Yeah.
Oh yes, I've been told to watch out for fursuit cooldown areas and things. I forget what they're called exactly.
Fursuit lounges.
Oh right.
Another good reason to go around the con is find out where the fursuit lounges are.
Fair
so you can retreat and get cool and hydrate. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I appreciate you answering the question.
You're welcome. Hi, Xenon.
This is more of a question on one of your points that you brought up earlier. I noticed that you had talked about the stigmatism that came with furries and how it's been broken with a lot of modern reporting. I'm going to ask about some of the modern day animation and things like that, such as, of course, Zootopia, BNA, Beastars. How do you think these can affect the fandom going forward in the future?
Well, I think it's cool that a lot of the furry fans who really like kind of edgy entertainment, who weren't getting that from Disney or Pixar or DreamWorks, have something like Beastars to attach to. It's like, oh, that can be furry. Furries can be super serious too. That's neat. And anime fans who also are furry, whether they admit it or not, BNA is a perfect combination of all of the things you see in a typical anime, but with a very strong furry vibe to it. There's a lot of actually other shows. It's just a shame that most of them did not get treated in a way that got distribution wider. There's a lot of furry stuff in Japan. The furry producers were a lot like the furry fans over there in the 70s, where if you're going to do a show with animal characters, it's a kid show. And eventually they got over that. So there are probably people who were furry who hadn't seen anything that attracted them to join the community until Beastars or until Zootopia, which, although the characters are cute, the story is, pretty serious. So great, another way to bring people into the fandom. It's perfect. Certainly, there have been material created in the fandom, content created in the fandom that was super serious and very edgy. But one of the things I'm a little bit sad about is the fandom seems to be, because of a lot of the young people coming into the fandom who don't know about the history, they don't look back. They don't look back at all the great content that was made. They're only looking for the newest thing. And if you haven't seen something, it's new to you. So, one of the things we did, I don't know if Changa's still here. I think he left, but my partner Changa was kind of upset that people were talking about furry history and kind of getting it so wrong. And so he decided he would take the old conference.com website, which was for our convention, conference, CONFURENC.com, and he would start scanning all the documents we had saved over the years. Our newsletters, furry party posters, announcements, CFO schedules, and magazines and all that, scanning thousands of things, and he put them up on what he calls the conference.com archive site. So young furs, or furs who didn't know about the past, can go see what furry fandom and other fandoms, like anime fandom, were like before the internet, and discover all of this rich history. And hopefully, if they do enough digging, they might be able to find, for example, the comic stories of Roz Gibson, the whole existential Angels and Demons comic Jack, things like that, which were right there in the early furry fandom, that showed that you can put animal characters in any kind of a story and make it work. So yeah, I'm all for, I may not like Beastars that much because I think it's way too heavy. But it's funny, I like BNA a lot more than a lot of young furs because I have a strong anime background. So I get it. I get the anime tropes. And they don't. And they're going like, what is this? Is silly. It's like
I'm right there with you on the anime.
How you're brought up,
I appreciate the insight.
Thank you. Good question. It's so great you people have stuck with me so long. Hi, Fun Time. Yes.
It's kind of something I thought up because I kind of remembered, since VR is so new, and I'm going back to the VR stuff, of course. It's me. With VR being so new and stuff being created for it, like replacements for controllers being feedback gloves. People are making feedback gloves for this. People are making full body feedback more affordable. Do you think that could be a reason why VR stuff could take over in-person stuff, just because now you have a more physical reaction to things? Like right now, if I walked up to you and patted you on the head, you wouldn't feel it, but someone down the road in like 2, 3, 4 years creates a way for you to feel it. Do you think that could be a reason why in-person conventions become less popular?
I'm not sure. I think it is definitely going to be great for people who might be nervous about actual contact, getting close to people, that kind of thing. So for building relationships that are safe because they're happening, in VR, that's probably important. But you got to remember, you go to an actual live con, you're going to another place. You're traveling to some other place. Even if it's just down the road, there's going to be things you're going to do outside of the convention. Like everyone that came to conference would always have time to set up a Disneyland trip. And some of the people who came to conference had never been to Disneyland before. And it gave them an excuse to do it. When I went to Eurofurence 7, it was in this beautiful old castle that was turned into a youth hostel. And I'd walk around the grounds in the German forest, and it was just look at the ruins. And, although you could theoretically do that in VR, it's different when you're actually there physically. When we went to Anthrocon the year it was in Philadelphia, we walked around historic Philadelphia and ate at a pub that had been there for hundreds of years. If you do that in VR, it's not, you can't really eat in VR, but if you do that in VR, you can see things.
But it's not going to hit as hard.
Things. But it's not the same thing. I don't think the pandemic is going to kill tourism forever. I hope it doesn't, because tourism is a big market. A lot of people make their living off of tourism. But yeah, I think physical conventions and VR conventions are going to probably stay a thing, but there's still going to be differences about them that one can't,
take over the other.
Always have the same feelings.
I ask these kinds of questions just because this is my second ever convention just in general. First one was like 2 years ago before the pandemic, and I enjoyed it to no end. It wasn't even a furry one; it was an anime one because my area is not that big on it. And I'm genuinely interested in VR stuff like haptic feedback. The college student who made the $20 VR gloves that he's still working on to make Bluetooth. That kind of stuff really interests me, and at least with VR, it makes it so much easier for me because I don't make as much money to allow me to go out to Midwest Furf, MFF, or anything like that. I only went to the convention because it was in my hometown. It's where I live. It made it so much easier. And all this kind of stuff always interested me. VR, alternate reality stuff. And the fact that I can be one of my characters that I've had for years now makes me really excited, because I got all this specifically for this event. And it just it feels, something about this model feels so much better than the model I usually run. I don't know what it is. Thank you, though.
You're welcome. Hi, GLaDOS.
Hello. I had a question a bit similar to what he said. Do you think we will ever reach a technological point where stuff like Sword Art Online can be real, and how do you think it will affect the world when any given person can live in their dream universe?
That's sort of like one of the things people call the singularity, and I don't really know how that's going to work out. I know there are people working on the technology of basically having your mind directly connected to something like this. And I think it could be a problem for humans. I think that given the ability to escape the problems of the real world and just live in a paradise, or on the other side, escape the boring real world, for having an exciting life that's dangerous but maybe can't kill you. Those are going to be really strong attractors. I mean, I already know people who are trying to live in VR chat. They're actually trying to live their lives here. And I don't know if that's completely healthy. I hope it works out for them. But it's not all furry is an escape. A lot of people that we ran into, Rod and I ran into, who were like trying to be intellectual about studying fandom, said, yeah, furry is different from most fandoms because it's actually just wish fulfillment. It's an escape. And we'd point out, no, not really, because people are creating their personas as not just someone who's themselves or better than themselves, but something they're aspiring to. And it does affect their real life. They're not trying to run from real life. It's like real life, but a little better. And I think that on the average, humans will be able to separate, the pure pleasure from actually having to survive. But I have noticed things in the world which are good, but they're also very different. People are talking about not owning cars anymore. There was a time in the United States, particularly in certain states, if you didn't have a car, you were like a second-class citizen. You couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't do anything. Couldn't have a job. That's changing. And there are actually car companies that have shut down completely. There are car companies that are starting to make only commercial vehicles. And lots of companies are thinking about stopping production of internal combustion engine vehicles in favor of electrics. And I hear a lot of talk in politics about, well, we can't pay for the roads with gas tax anymore if people are not buying gas, so we're going to start charging people for how much they drive. And this is a double advantage, because not only will we have the money to keep the roads set up and of course make a lot of contractors rich, but people will be driving less, which pollutes less, which less accidents. They'll stick around their home, they'll get their stuff delivered. I don't think I'd want to live in a world where we're all locked up in our own little boxes, even if those little boxes were inside our head. But who knows?
Yeah. Thank you. I definitely think it's just scary, but cool at the same time. Also, I like your avatar. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Hi, Moshi. Hello.
This is more towards a personal question of mine. So I've been a furry for a little over a year, and it's kind of been one of the greatest experiences of my life. I'm actually able to kind of envelop myself in my own emotions and be able to express it through a lot of different areas. However, my question is, me also being a furry, there's kind of an area of where I kind of separate the two, because I do honestly feel a lot better, in my sona and being able to express myself the way I want to. Is there any advice that you can give for somebody that's kind of wanting to, it's an odd question, kind of to separate the two, because I kind of feel a lot better, healthier in my sona, other than, myself, and I just kind of wanted some advice on somebody who can kind of give me that.
Well, it sounds like what you might want to do is make your real person a little more like your sona, which I don't think is a bad thing. I mean, the business I'm in is not super competitive, but I do have competition. I do have to go out and sell my, what I do and kind of myself to get jobs. And I think my choice of a pine marten, being a smaller carnivore, a weasel, actually helped, because small carnivores, because they are also in a situation where they're prey sometimes, they have to have enough attitude to stay alive. They have to convince the predator that they're not a good meal. They have to put up a lot of fight and a lot of front to stay alive. So they have this sort of fighter pilot indestructible attitude. And I think that actually helped me get work. I would go into a job going, these people don't know who I am. They don't know what I'm capable of, but it doesn't matter, because, I'm a weasel and I can do anything. I took on some very large jobs early on in my career that scared me. The size of them, the scope. just scared me. But I still went ahead and said, and they go, can you do this? Can you do this? And it's like, yeah, I can do all that stuff you need. My little company can do everything that big company said they could do. Mm-hmm. And it worked. So, take some aspects of your persona and kind of drag them across to your real life and see if that works. See if you feel better. See if you can develop healthier habits, things like that. Because your persona is you better or you different, but it's still you.
Yeah, you're right. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Welcome to the fandom. The drone flies by. Oh my God. Time is over.
Actually, you've got another 10 minutes. We're gonna kick you up to 8:15 here. And with that, I've got another question.
Good.
Let's see here. This one, I kind of like this one. Tango Delta asks, what advice would you give to someone thinking about creating a character struggling with problems with their identity?
Oh, coming up with a persona. That is a tricky one. I know a lot of people who got their persona idea from the way other people related to them. It's kind of like, might have been passive aggressive, personality traits. We tend to do that. We tend to anthropomorphize. Oh my God, what a word! Real animals. We look at real animals and say there are aspects of these real animals that we can say are kind of like human aspects. Actually, it might be the other way around. Humans might have been getting aspects of their personality from the animals. Dogs are loyal. They like to hang around in groups. They cats are more distant, but they form strong bonds to certain people. Bears are generally so big and present themselves as essentially indestructible. They tend to be calm. They don't worry a lot. Nothing's going to mess with them. And a lot of people base their personas on that. Some people will like a certain animal, and it can be any animal. It can even be an insect, and they go, I really like that animal. I want to be one of those, or I'm going to turn into one of those, or whatever. And other times, they'll see something, like in media. They'll see a Disney film, or a DreamWorks film, or a video game, and they'll go, I want to be that character, or I want to live in that character's universe. I want to live in the Sonic universe. I want to be a character in The Lion King. I want to be a character in Zootopia. I want to be another bunny cop, or I want to be on the police force as a different animal. And those are OCs. Those are original characters. And it's easy to make an original character, harder to come up with a persona, because the persona is a lot more personal. And some people will change their persona like they change their underwear. It's like they have a different persona every week. I don't think that's really a persona. But they can certainly say that. It's completely up to them. I would say if you don't have a strong connection to real animals, because you don't have to be into real animals to have the furry attraction. If you're not into real animals and there's no animals you're particularly fond of, instead of basing your personal character on an animal, base it on personality traits you like that are reflected in animals. They can be mythical animals. They can be something you completely made up. I mean, I completely made up the skill tear, but they're based on otters and martens because I liked otters and martens. Later, I discovered my love for avians, but I don't see myself as an avian. I just like them. And I make avian OCs, but I don't have an avian persona because it just doesn't fit. So yeah, it's kind of like the sky's the limit. But like I said, if you don't have a link to an animal, go instead for personality traits that you have already or you like, and see if you can find a fit. Remember, you don't have to have a fursona to be a furry. It's handy for some things, but just like you don't have to have a fursuit to be a furry. You don't have to be an artist or a writer or a musician to be a furry, because it's furry fandom, and the fans are just as important as everybody else. I hope that helped.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think so. You answered it. So I think at this point, if we want to take one more question, if someone has a quick one, we have time for one more, and then I think I'll ask if you wouldn't mind just hanging around for just a couple minutes afterwards, because I think Daxter and Biscuit wanted to do a couple questions. But aside from that,
Very quick
I think
question.
if anyone has a question, go ahead.
Can you want to? I was going to say.
Funtime Fox, did you want to have something?
Oh, I was just going to ask quick. When you're done, when we're done, can you get dinner?
Yes,
Pizza?
I will. Yes, okay, good. I like that idea. Hi, Funtime.
This one's just more of a personal one. It ain't gonna be anything deep like my last ones. Favorite game. It doesn't have to be furry. It could be something like Doom Eternal. You know, what would you say your favorite game would be?
Yeah, for some reason, the whole gaming thing completely missed me. I just don't like competitive games at all. So I'm not really a gamer. As far as things I spend lots of time on, I spent lots of time in mucking years ago. I actually had several characters I would play at the same time on different mucks or in different worlds on mucks. And literally spent hours a night mucking. And it's after that, I spent 3 years on a Lion King muck, which was a Lion King based text adventure sort of you made it up yourself as you went along. I spent 3 years. I had a family of people from around the world who played regularly on it. It created lots of beautiful art. I actually wrote 6 comics that got published based on that. Not really a game though. It's just like Second Life. I got really into Second Life. I got on Second Life in 2008 when I finally had a computer that could play it. And I hung out at clubs. Changa and I are DJ partners. We play music for people in clubs. And then I discovered that it was possible to make new avatars by taking pieces of old avatars and mixing them up. So I do that. I create beautiful avatars so I can go into worlds. People go, that's a beautiful avatar. Trouble is, you can't take them out of the world. So that's the only place I can do that. But yeah, unfortunately, I'm just not a gamer. Sorry about that.
Dang, I was expecting you to be, the next phase. All right, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Go get food.
Oh, okay. Changa's suggesting some pizza. I don't know. Maybe you want to join us? Okay. Okay, Flay.
Thank you for that. If
Yeah.
you want to just do like a quick little closing out here, aside from that, thank you all for coming. I turn this over to you, and then feel free to say any quick remarks here, and then I think that's about it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for all the great questions, and I really enjoy doing this. I will talk and talk and talk and talk and just won't shut up. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the convention, and I hope you enjoy VR chat and the other VR games, and maybe go to some live conventions after it's safe. Have a good time. Enjoy the fandom. I will probably be back again to do this, and I might hang out at the Discord and answer some questions afterwards. Thank you so much for coming and listening to me. Even those who didn't have questions, I appreciate you paying attention to my TED Talk. And enjoy yourselves. Have fun.
Hello, guys. We are here doing a mini interview with Sylys with us today. How are you feeling today? You feel good? How was your Q&A?
Yes, I'm feeling great. This was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. A lot of good questions.
It was. How does it feel to actually be back at Furality and hosting your amazing Q&As?
I had such a great time at Furality last time. It was really nice. I like the theming, although I liked the theming last time too. And I also like the fact that the getting into instances was a lot easier this time.
Yeah, last time was a little problem.
So what do you think of Furality Luma, and how do you like the worlds?
I think they're beautiful. I understand, of course, that they are super optimized, but they really don't look like it. It looks the environments are really kind of like a star. They're like one of the stars of the convention is the environments. The dealers' rooms particularly impressed me, and also the amount of dealers and the sheer variety was incredible.
Nope, that's so
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I have one more question.
I want to ask a question first.
Okay, go ahead.
This will be my last question. What do you want to do after this? Like, after everything we're done with VR, like, what you going to be doing?
You mean today?
With life. What are you going to be doing?
Oh, with life. Right now I'm putting a lot of effort into fixing up our house, both outside and in, because I want to set it up so that it's as clean and neat and low maintenance as possible, because it's kind of the thing that I am, my mates will have after I'm gone. So that's super important to me. And we're going to start our parties again soon, which means we'll have people coming back into the house.
Party!
And the house itself is kind of like a character. It's a special place. It's a museum. It's an archive. It's a library. And there's no place quite like it as far as fandoms are concerned. So, I hope that legacy remains, for years to come.
That's good.
Awesome. I last question. Can I get a hug?
Oh, sure. We can try that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Oh yes. Aw.
Oh, thank you so much.
Wait.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for all your time here at the convention and all of you done for the fandom.
I'll hug you too.
Stop! I'm gonna cry too.
There you go.
Oh my god.
I hope you have a good time staying with us. You should come back anytime.
I will try to do that. Yes, it's been great. Thank you so much.
Bye.